Hello. I usually don't have issues with toilets. I use toilets regularly. This is the sort of thing I've had down pat for as long as I can remember. I never thought I'd have the sort of washroom calamity I'm now telling you about, considering I literally shit in a toilet's mouth every day. I use the handicap stall whenever possible, because, much the same as anyone else who does, I'm a terrible person. Barring those who are not actually handicapped. Much to my chagrin, emotional handicaps do not qualify, but I use the stall anyway. I have a better time in the larger stalls. There's more room. There's a baby changing station if I have work to do. And there's a sense of importance there that I'm neglected by my peers in everyday life that I get there. Touching cheeks to the reserved handicapped toilet feels like coming home. Unlike home, though, I don't host visitors in the handicap stall, so when I heard a knock on the door of my lavatory domicile, I was quite startled and scared shitless. But only due to the fact that I was simultaneously scared and literally shitless at this point in my defecatory journey. Yes, the knock came at the point in my water closet therapy when I have not yet begun wiping, but have altogether completed my movement. It's the quaint downtime period, an amount of time between 2 and 15 minutes, accompanied usually by a smartphone screen filled with the latest meme digest, or, in the lack of a smartphone, existentialism. Because that's what shitting is about. I looked under the stall at my visitors' shoes in an attempt to identify them. No luck. It's as if identifying someone by their shoes is nigh impossible or something. Regardless, through under the stall portal I spied an irregular appearance, 1 leg and 4 wheels. Thank you. Presumably a wheelchair. Presumably a man in a wheelchair, presuming further I was in the correct facility to begin with. You know what they say about making presumptions. I was suddenly faced with a new and terrible reality. Not that I had done something wrong, but that I had been caught doing something arguably wrong. I stated that the stall was occupied, and then began to compress my memes and existentialism to begin wiping. A grunt came from the other side of the door in acknowledgement of my statement and presumably contempt of my existence. Accompanying this grunt was my own gasp of dread, a sucking in of air which I do not recommend committing in a public bathroom for obvious reasons. Dread, terror, and shame, there was no toilet paper. No. There was toilet paper. It was out of reach. It was locked inside the dispenser, imprisoned in a translucent plastic cage. The toilet paper called out for me to free it. Alas, I could not reach into the dispenser, as it was constructed like a cruel vending machine, with no obvious way to open it. The MacGyver in me said, use the knife in your pocket to pry open the dispenser. The barbarian in me said, punch it. How many punches does it take to get to the center of a toilet paper dispenser? I don't remember. But it did take about 5 punches to sprain my wrist. The sounds of my punching was accompanied by a medley of expletives from the 1-legged, 4-wheeled man, as I felt his soul give up on me. As I wrestled, pugilized, and altogether molested the toilet paper dispenser, the 1-legged man turned from my stall door and entered the stall next to mine. A normal stall. A stall so narrow you couldn't hardly turn around in it. So narrow a bodybuilder would be trapped, wedged into the stall with his muscles for 127 hours. I'm not sure how the man wheeled his chair into the stall, but he did. Wedging large, rigid objects into tighter, smaller spaces is something I've seen done before, but usually in the more questionable, highly frequented corners of the internet that everyone is hesitant to admit that he's bookmarked. The one-legged man penetrated the small bathroom stall with his big black chair, and he came inside it, slurring fucks and shits as he did, in a tone reminiscent of Tom Waits stubbing his toe, and was accompanied by the appropriately gravelly backdrop of me. Finally, I opened the dispenser. Rather, I destroyed the dispenser. I obliterated it. Dispensers everywhere, fear my wrath. And the toilet paper was mine, all mine. I've never worked so hard for access to single ply before. Nor had my puckering orifice craved the contact of its sweet scruffiness. I wiped. Finished with the excrement excavation, I raised my pants. The one-legged man, having wheeled his chair into the stall, was mid-transfer, moving the mass of his 75%-ish body from his throne of disability to the throne of evacuation. I could tell this because he was yelling at me. Do you know how hard it is to do this shit? Do you know how hard it is to take a shit with one leg? I admit, as someone who is whole, and maybe even more than that, I can't appreciate the troubles of someone with one foot in the grave. Well, maybe not the grave, but I bet his other leg is in a hole in the ground somewhere. Then, standing with my pants up, the toilet began the auto-flush sequence. Down and down the water went. Then up and up it came right back, filling faster and fuller. The robo-toilet wasn't programmed for this situation. It kept flushing and raising its bowl's sea level. Soon the bowl would be spilling my sewage onto the floor. It was chasing me. I had crossed the toilet gods and upset them. I had to get out of there. I walked briskly out of the stall, past the one-legged man who yelled at me, "What are you doing? Stop flushing the toilet." He stopped as he realized what was occurring. Soon the water was flowing under the stall, and I was leaving the room. A room where my indigenous feces roamed free over the wet floor and rising water levels. Some days I wonder what happened to that man. I like to think he survived the flood that followed in my wake. Or if he didn't, and if he drowned there to his death, I like to think that he's somewhere in the ether, looking down on me as my guardian one-winged angel. Thank you.